The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched higher than any building on Earth. Ambassador John Carter walked across the polished floor toward the center circle, where he would make humanity's final plea. His black diplomatic uniform felt heavy under the gaze of hundreds of alien eyes. The massive chamber held representatives from 47 different species, and none of them looked friendly. Council. Speaker Zethkar rose from his crystal throne at the far end of the hall. The Vorthan leader stood 12 feet tall, and his body glowed with pale blue light. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the translation devices that every species wore. "We gather today to decide the fate of the human species," Zethkar announced. "For 50 years, they have spread across our galaxy like a plague. They take what they want and ignore our laws. They build weapons when we tell them to make peace. They refuse to follow the wisdom of older civilizations." Carter stepped into the speaking circle and activated his own translator. "Honored Council, humanity has never broken any treaty we signed. We have shared our medical knowledge that saved millions of Elkrani lives when the bone plague hit their worlds. We gave the Grexians new farming techniques that ended their food shortages. We helped the Korans build better ships to defend their trade routes." Salith, the snake-like delegate from the Elkrani worlds, hissed her displeasure. "You helped us only to gain our trust. Then you built military bases in systems we told you to avoid. You mined asteroids that belong to other species. You acted like you own the galaxy." "We built those bases to protect shipping lanes from pirates," Carter replied. "We asked permission to mine those asteroids and received approval from your own trade commission. Every action we took followed galactic law." The Grexian representative, a being with 3 eyes and gray skin, spoke in his buzzing voice. "Laws mean nothing when your species ignores the spirit behind them. You expand too fast. You reproduce too quickly. You consume resources like hungry insects. Other species take centuries to colonize one new world. Humans do it in decades." Carter felt his patience wearing thin, but kept his voice steady. "We work efficiently because we have to. Earth can only support so many people. We need new worlds to give our children homes and futures. Is ambition now a crime in this galaxy?" Captain Lisa Morgan, Earth's military liaison, stood beside Carter. She wore the blue uniform of the Earth Defense Force and carried herself like the soldier she was. "Honored delegates, we need to discuss the real threat facing all of us. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive objects moving through the void beyond the galactic rim. Something is heading towards civilized space, and it's destroying everything in its path." Several delegates laughed at her words. Zethkar's crystal body pulsed with what the humans had learned was Vorthan amusement. "More human paranoia," the council speaker said. "Your species sees enemies everywhere because you think like warriors instead of civilized beings. You want use to fear imaginary threats, so we will let you build more weapons." Dr. Helen Brooks, Earth's chief scientist assigned to the council, activated her datapad and projected images into the air above the speaking circle. "These are not imaginary threats. Look at the sensor readings from the Kepler Deep Space Array. 7 star systems on the outer rim have gone completely silent in the past 2 years. No radio signals, no ship traffic, nothing." The Yutani delegate, a tall being with silver skin and large eyes, studied the data with interest. "Equipment failures happen all the time in deep space. Solar storms can disrupt communications for months. Not across 7 different systems spanning 3,000 light years," Dr. Brooks replied. "The pattern shows something moving in a straight line toward the galactic core, something big enough to affect entire solar systems." Zethkar raised one crystal in hand for silence. "Enough. We did not gather here to listen to human theories about invisible monsters. We came to solve the human problem once and for all. The council speaker gestured to the viewing screens around the chamber. Each screen showed a different human colony world. New Geneva with its gleaming cities and green parks. Haven Prime with its vast orbital shipyards. Eden's Garden were human. Farmers grew food for a dozen species. Look at what they have built in just 50 years, Zethkar continued. Cities that rival our oldest settlements. Military fleets that could challenge any single-member species. Industrial capacity that produces more goods than most empires managed in centuries. They are not members of our galactic community. They are conquerors waiting for the right moment to strike. Carter stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. That is a lie, and you know it. Every human colony pays taxes to the galactic treasury. We follow your trade regulations. We submit to your inspections. We have never attacked another species or claimed territory that belonged to someone else. You have violated 17 different interstellar treaties, Salith hissed. You're minors. Work in systems where other species have prior claims. Your ships carry weapons in peaceful sectors. Your colonies refuse to limit their population growth as required by galactic environmental law. Those mining claims were abandoned centuries ago, Morgan shot back. Our ships carry defensive weapons because pirates attack civilian transports. Our colonies grow because people want to have families and build lives. The debate continued for hours. The alien delegates brought up every complaint, every minor violation, every cultural misunderstanding from 50 years of human expansion. Carter answered each accusation with facts and legal precedents. But he could see that minds were already made up. Finally, Zethkar called for silence and delivered the verdict that everyone expected. The Galactic Council has decided. Humanity poses a clear and present danger to galactic peace and stability. You have 72 hours to evacuate all human colonies and return to your home system. After that time, Earth will be placed under permanent quarantine. No human ship will be allowed to leave the Sol system. No other species will trade with or communicate with humanity. You will remain isolated until you learn to control your aggressive impulses. The chamber erupted in cheers from most of the alien delegates. Carter felt like he had been punched in the stomach. 47 human colony worlds. 8 million human civilians. Hundreds of billions of credits worth of infrastructure. All of it would be lost. You are making a terrible mistake, Carter said, his voice carrying clearly through the celebration. When the real threat arrives, you will need every capable species working together to survive. You are about to exile the most adaptable, most resourceful people in this galaxy just when you need us most. Zethkar's crystal form pulsed brighter. Humanity's time in this galaxy is over. You have 48 hours remaining. As the council session ended and the alien delegates filed out, of the chamber, Carter, Morgan, and Dr. Brooks stood alone in the vast hall. The weight of what had just happened settled on their shoulders like a heavy blanket. They won't listen, Dr. Brooks said quietly. I have 15 years of data showing ecological collapse in the outer systems. The signs are all there. Something is systematically stripping worlds of all biological matter as it moves inward. But they are too focused on getting rid of us to see the real danger. Morgan checked her chronometer. 48 hours to evacuate 8 million people from 47 worlds. It cannot be done. Carter straightened his shoulders and activated his emergency communicator. Get me Admiral Hayes at Terra Command. Authorization code Alpha 77. Tell him to initiate Operation Exodus immediately. As they walked out of the council chamber for the last time, none of them looked back. Humanity had been judged and sentenced by species who thought they knew better. Soon, those same species would learn exactly what they had thrown away. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council delivered their ultimatum. Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the cargo vessel, New Horizon, and watched through the main viewing screen as New Geneva grew smaller behind them. The planet that had taken 30 years to build was now just a blue dot against the black of space. In the cargo bays below his feet, 3,000 refugees huddled together with whatever belongings they could carry. Final head count coming. In from the fleet commanders, Communications Officer Amy Peterson reported from her station. 2,347 vessels of all sizes. We are carrying approximately 8 million people from 17 colony worlds. Sullivan gripped the armrests of his command chair tighter. 8 million human lives crammed into ships that were never designed to carry so many people for such a long journey. The lucky ones had bunks in converted cargo holds. The rest slept on floors or took shifts, sharing sleeping spaces. What about the garden ships? Sullivan asked. All 12 agricultural vessels are maintaining life support systems, Peterson replied. Commander Davis reports they managed to save genetic samples from most of the colony worlds, plus enough seeds and livestock embryos to restart farming on Earth. Through the intercom system, Sullivan could hear children crying in the lower decks. These kids had never seen Earth. New Geneva was the only home they had ever known. Now they were refugees fleeing to a world their grandparents had left behind. Decades ago, in Section C of the ship, former colony administrator Corinne White moved between the refugee families, trying to keep spirits up. She had run a city of 2 million people on New Geneva. Now she was helping families share ration packs and find clean water for their children. Mrs. Patterson, how are the twins doing? Corinne asked an elderly woman who sat on a blanket with 2 young boys. They keep asking when we can go home, Mrs. Patterson replied with tears in her eyes. I tell them we are going home, but they do not understand. Earth is just a story to them. Corinne knelt down beside the boys who looked maybe 6 years old. What are your names? I am Danny, and this is my brother Bobby, one of the boys said. Are there really animals on Earth that we have never seen? Oh, yes, Corinne said with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. There are great big animals, called elephants, and tiny animals, called hummingbirds, that can fly backwards. There are oceans so big you cannot see the other side. The boys seemed excited by this news, but Mrs. Patterson just looked more worried. Corinne patted the old woman's shoulder and moved on to the next family. 3 decks up, Dr. Helen Brooks worked frantically in her makeshift laboratory. She had managed to save most of her research data about the threat approaching from the galactic rim, but the Vorthans had seized all her deep space monitoring equipment when they took control of the colony worlds. The pattern is getting clearer, she muttered to herself as she studied star charts on her computer screen. Whatever is out there, it has consumed 12 star systems in the past year. The Galactic Council thinks we are paranoid, but they will learn the truth soon enough. Her assistant, a young scientist named Kevin Murphy, looked up from his own workstation. Dr. Brooks, I have been analyzing the energy signatures from the dead systems. The power levels are unlike anything we have seen before. If something can consume an entire solar system, what chance do we have? Dr. Brooks saved her work and turned to face Kevin. That is exactly why the Council made such a huge mistake. They think we are dangerous because we adapt quickly and solve problems in new ways. Those are exactly the qualities everyone will need to survive what is coming. Captain Sullivan's voice came over the ship's communication system. All section. Leaders report to the bridge for the daily briefing. When Corinne White arrived at the bridge, she found Sullivan studying reports from the other ships in the refugee fleet. His face looked tired and older than his 50 years. How are our people? Holding up? Sullivan asked. Better than expected, worse than we hoped, Corinne replied honestly. The children are adapting well, but the adults are struggling. Many of them spent their entire adult lives building homes and businesses on the colony worlds. Starting over on Earth feels impossible to them. What about supplies? Food will last another 2 months if we maintain current rationing. Water recycling systems are working at full capacity. Medical supplies are running low, especially medicines for the elderly. Dr. Brooks entered the bridge carrying a data pad, full of her latest research. Captain, I need to show you something important. I have been tracking the destruction pattern in the outer rim systems, and I can predict where it will strike next. She activated the main display screen and showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red markers indicated star systems that had gone silent. Yellow markers showed systems that had reported strange sensor readings before communications ended. Based on the speed and direction of this thing, it will reach the core worlds in 18 months, Dr. Brooks explained. The Vorthan home system, the Elkrani trade centers, the Grexian agricultural worlds, all of them will be in the path of destruction. Sullivan studied the projection with growing concern. They forced us out just as Nightmare is about to. Hit them? The irony is bitter, Dr. Brooks replied. They exiled the one species that might have been able to help them develop new strategies and technologies to fight this threat. Amy Peterson interrupted their conversation. Captain, incoming. Message from the transport ship Second Chance. They are reporting a medical emergency. A pregnant woman is having complications, and they do not have proper medical facilities. Can we take her aboard? Sullivan asked. Our medical bay is already treating patients from 6 other ships, Karen said, but we will make room somehow. This was the reality of the Exodus. Too many people, not enough ships, and limited resources for a journey that would take months. Every day brought new challenges as the refugee fleet struggled to reach Earth before their supplies ran out. In the lower cargo holds, families gathered around small cooking units to share meals and tell stories. Former farmers talked about the crops they had left behind. Former engineers discussed the factories and power plants they had built. Former teachers worried about how to educate children in overcrowded ships. But despite the hardships, something remarkable was happening. The humans were adapting. They shared what little they had. They took care of each other's children. They organized entertainment and educational programs to keep spirits up. They planned for their future on Earth, even as they grieved for the worlds they had lost. The aliens think they have defeated us, Sullivan said to his senior officers. As they watched Earth grow larger on their screens, they will learn that forcing humanity into exile was the biggest mistake they ever made. 18 months after humanity's exile, the first emergency broadcasts began flooding the galactic communication networks. Admiral Kaith Ara of the Vorthan Deep Space Fleet sat in her command chair aboard the battleship Crystal Dawn and watched the reports with growing horror. The Outer Rim colonies had stopped transmitting their daily status updates 3 weeks ago. Now the Middle Rim systems were going silent one by one. Admiral, we are receiving a distress signal from the Elkrani mining station at Sector 7. Her communications officer Kreleneth reported. They say something massive is blocking out their sun. Quathara activated the main viewing screen and saw the last transmission from the mining station. The image showed Elkrani workers pointing at their sky in terror. Above them, a dark shape stretched across the horizon, so large it made their planet's 3 moons look like tiny dots. The transmission ended abruptly in static. Send a reconnaissance probe to that system immediately, Quathara ordered. I want to know what happened to those miners. 3 days later, the probe returned with footage that would haunt the Admiral's dreams for the rest of her life. The Elkrani mining world was still there, but it had been stripped completely bare. No atmosphere, no oceans, no signs of life. Even the metal ore deposits had been removed, leaving behind a gray ball of rock floating in space. Council speaker Zethkar called an emergency session of the Galactic Council, but only half the delegates managed to attend. The others were dealing with crisis situations in their own territories. The great chamber that had once echoed with confident voices, now filled with frightened whispers. "We are facing an unprecedented threat," Sethkar announced, his crystal body pulsing with nervous energy. 17 star systems have been completely sterilized. Whatever is responsible shows no interest in communication and does not respond to our weapons. General Vax of the militant Koran species stood up from his seat. My battle fleets engaged one of these creatures near the Helix Nebula. It was the size of a small moon and covered in what looked like mechanical tentacles. Our plasma cannons did no damage at all. The thing just absorbed the energy and grew larger. Salith, the Alkrani delegate, spoke in a voice full of panic. "My people are evacuating 12 worlds in the path of these monsters. We call them harvesters because they consume everything organic and leave nothing behind. Plants, animals, even the bacteria in the soil. All of it disappears." The Grexian representative buzzed with fear. "Our agricultural colonies are defenseless against such creatures. We have sent evacuation ships, but there are not enough vessels to save everyone. Billions of our people will die." Admiral Quethara had been studying the attack patterns for weeks, and she requested permission to speak to the council. "Honored delegates, I have analyzed all available data about these harvesters. They are not random in their movements. They follow a spiral pattern, consuming every system they encounter as they move toward the galactic core." She activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy with red marks indicating destroyed systems. Based on their current speed and trajectory, they will reach the core worlds within 6 months. That includes the Vorthan home system, the Alkrani trade centers, and the Grexian agricultural planets. The chamber erupted in frightened voices as delegates realized their own worlds were doomed. Zethkar called for order, but his usual commanding presence seemed diminished. "What weapons have proven effective against these creatures?" he asked. "None," General Vax replied grimly. "Plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion missiles, antimatter torpedoes, nothing works. They absorb all forms of energy and convert it into more of themselves. Conventional warfare is useless." In the back of the chamber, a young Yutani scientist named Nexus raised his hand to speak. "Council Speaker, there may be one option we have not considered. The humans warned us about this threat before we exiled them. Their deep space monitoring systems detected the harvesters long before our sensors picked them up." The chamber fell silent. The mention of humanity brought uncomfortable looks to many faces. "The humans are quarantined in their home system," Zethkar said stiffly. "They have no advanced technology that we do not possess." "With respect, Council Speaker, that may not be true," Nexus continued. "Human science approaches problems differently than ours. They adapt quickly and think of solutions that other species never consider. If anyone can find a way to fight these harvesters, it might be them." Saleth hissed her displeasure. "You suggest we crawl back to the species we exiled and beg for their help? The humans are probably celebrating our destruction." Admiral Kadara stood up again. "I have been monitoring transmissions from the Sol system. The humans are not celebrating. They have been sending warning messages to all galactic frequencies, trying to alert us about weak points in our defensive networks, even after we cast them out. They are still trying to help us." "Impossible," Sethkar said. "Human nature is selfish and aggressive. They would not risk themselves to save their enemies." "Perhaps we misjudged human nature," Quethara replied quietly. "My intelligence reports suggest they have been building defensive installations around Earth at an unprecedented rate. They are preparing for the arrival of the harvesters, and they may have developed countermeasures." The debate continued for hours as the council struggled with their pride and their desperation. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, billions of beings fled their homes as the harvester swarms consumed world after world. Refugee fleets crowded the space lanes, carrying the survivors of once mighty civilizations. Captain Nexus of the Yutani research vessel, Transcendence, had been secretly monitoring human communication frequencies for weeks. His science team discovered that Earth's solar system was buzzing with organized activity. Construction ships were building massive orbital platforms. Military vessels moved in coordinated formations. Most surprising of all, the humans seemed to have a plan. Captain, we are detecting weapon signatures, unlike anything in our databases, his sensor operator reported. The humans have developed completely new technologies in the 18 months since their exile. Nexus studied the sensor readings with growing amazement. They are preparing for a war unlike any in galactic history. The question is whether they will share their discoveries with the species that banished them. As the last transmission from the Grexian outer colonies cut to static, Admiral Kathara made a decision that would change the fate of the galaxy. She ordered her ship to break formation and set course for the Sol system. If humanity had answers, she would find them, even if it meant defying the Galactic Council's quarantine order. Behind her, the lights of 1,000 civilizations flickered and died as the harvesters continued their relentless advance toward the heart of the galaxy. Deep within Earth's solar system, humanity had transformed their exile into the largest military buildup in their history. Admiral Robert Hayes stood in the command center of the orbital fortress Terra's shield and watched the tactical displays that showed defensive positions throughout the Sol system. The forced exodus had done something that centuries of peaceful expansion never accomplished. It had united every human being under a single purpose. "Status report, Colonel," Hayes ordered as Colonel Nancy Baker approached with her daily briefing. "All defensive platforms are operational, Admiral," Baker replied, consulting her datapad. "The asteroid mining facilities have provided enough raw materials to construct 47 new battleships. The Luna shipyards are working around the clock. Every piece of salvageable equipment from the colony worlds has been converted into weapons or defensive systems." Hayes nodded with satisfaction. When the refugee fleets had arrived at Earth 18 months ago, many people expected chaos and despair. Instead, they found determination and purpose. Engineers who had built cities on distant worlds now built orbital weapons platforms. Farmers who had fed colonies now managed hydroponic gardens that fed construction crews. Teachers who had educated children now trained soldiers and technicians. "What about Dr. Brooks' research division?" Hayes asked. "She has made significant breakthroughs, sir. You should hear her latest report personally." In the research laboratories of Luna Base, Dr. Helen Brooks worked alongside the brightest scientific minds that humanity had ever assembled. The Exile had forced Earth to recall every expert from across the galaxy, concentrating their knowledge in one location for the first time in decades. "Admiral Hayes, thank you for coming," Dr. Brooks said as Hayes entered her laboratory. "I need to show you what we have discovered about the harvesters." She led him to a sealed chamber where her team had been conducting experiments on biological samples recovered from the outer rim worlds. The harvesters are not just consuming matter for energy. They are converting everything into more of themselves. Each creature we have studied contains millions of different organic and mechanical components working together. Hayes studied the displayed data with interest. "So they grow stronger with every world they consume?" "Exactly, but they have a critical weakness," Dr. Brooks explained excitedly. "They can only process materials that exist naturally in biological systems. Their conversion process breaks down completely when they encounter certain synthetic compounds that do not exist in nature." She activated a demonstration chamber where a small sample of harvester tissue writhed in a nutrient solution. When she introduced a few drops of synthetic chemical compound, the tissue immediately stopped moving and began to dissolve. We have developed specialized weapons that can deliver these toxins directly into harvester biomechanical systems, Dr. Brooks continued. But the delivery method requires close-range engagement, which means someone has to get near enough to these creatures to inject the poison. Captain Pete Anderson, now commanding the prototype vessel Earth's Vengeance, reviewed the tactical plans with his senior officers. The ship represented the best of human engineering, combining salvage technology from the colony worlds with completely new innovations developed during the Exile period. So our strategy is to let these monsters get close enough to Earth that we can poison them? Anderson asked Dr. Brooks during the briefing. The toxins only work if we can deliver them directly into their biological systems, she replied. These creatures are intelligent enough to avoid obvious traps, so we need to make them think they are winning until the final moment. The plan was audacious in its scope and terrifying in its implications. Humanity would use Earth itself as bait, allowing the harvester swarms to approach the solar system, while every human ship, station, and defensive platform prepared for a coordinated strike. Success would save not just humanity, but every remaining civilization in the galaxy. Failure would mean the end of human existence. They forced us into exile, thinking we were too dangerous to be part of galactic civilization, Admiral Hayes announced to the assembled fleet commanders during their final strategic meeting. They will learn what humanity is truly capable of when we are fighting for our survival and the survival of everyone else, whether they deserve our protection or not. Communications Officer Betty Clark interrupted the briefing with an urgent message. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from outside the quarantine zone. It is from a Vorthan admiral named Quethara. She is requesting emergency assistance and offering to share tactical data about harvester movements. Hayes considered the situation carefully. The Galactic Council had made it clear that any contact with humanity was forbidden, but this admiral was risking her career and possibly her life to seek their help. Put her through, Colonel Clark. It is time the galaxy learned the truth about human nature. The main screen activated to show Admiral Quethara on the bridge of her Vorthan battleship. Her crystal form flickered with what humans had learned to recognize as extreme stress. Admiral Hayes, I am grateful that you answered my transmission. My name is Quethara of the Vorthan Deep Space Fleet. I come to you in violation of Council orders because my people are dying and we have no other options. We have been monitoring the situation, Admiral, Hayes replied. Our deep space sensors show that the harvester swarms will reach the core worlds within 90 days. How can we help? Quethara seemed surprised by the offer of assistance. You would help us after we exiled your species? We warned you this was coming, Hayes said simply. You chose not to listen. But we will not let billions of innocent beings die because their leaders made poor decisions. What do you need from us? Complete tactical data on harvester movements, fleet positions, and attack patterns, Hayes replied. In exchange, we will share our defensive strategies and weapon specifications. But I must warn you, our plan involves significant risks for everyone involved. As Admiral Quethara transmitted the requested information, Dr. Brooks analyzed the data and updated her projections. Admiral, this intelligence confirms our worst fears. The main harvester swarm is larger than we estimated. We are looking at thousands of individual creatures, each one the size of a battleship or larger. Hayes studied the updated tactical displays and felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on his shoulders. How long do we have to prepare? 72 hours until the leading edge of the swarm enters our sensor range, Colonel Baker reported. After that, it will be 6 hours until they reach Earth's orbit. Then we use every minute we have left, Hayes declared. Signal all ships and stations. Operation Last Stand begins now. The final battle began in the space between Mars and Jupiter, where humanity had spent 18 months preparing the largest artificial battlefield in known history. Admiral Robert Hayes watched from the command center of Terra's shield as the harvester swarm approached like a living shadow that seemed to drink the light from the stars themselves. The biomechanical creatures moved in perfect coordination, their forms pulsing with alien hunger as they detected the rich biological signatures of Earth's solar system. "All units, this is command," Hayes announced over the fleet communication system. "Remember, we let them get close. We need them to believe they are winning until we spring the trap." Captain Pete Anderson guided his ship Earth's Vengeance through the outer defensive perimeter, leading a squadron of fast attack missiles toward the approaching swarm. His crew had trained for this moment for months, but nothing could have prepared them for the sight of thousands of harvester creatures stretching across space like a malevolent tide. "They are even bigger than our intelligence reports suggested," Anderson's weapons officer Lieutenant Dan Cooper reported. "The largest ones are the size of space stations." "Size does not matter if our toxins work," Anderson replied, though his voice carried more confidence than he felt. "All ships, prepare for pattern alpha engagement. We draw them into the kill zone." The human fleet began what appeared to be a desperate retreat toward Earth, firing conventional weapons that the harvesters absorbed without effect. The alien creatures followed eagerly, drawn by the promise of a heavily populated world full of biological material to consume. Dr. Helen Brooks monitored the engagement from her command post on Luna Base, watching as her years of research were put to the ultimate test. "Admiral, the harvesters are responding exactly as predicted. They are accelerating their advance and bunching together to overwhelm our defenses." "Excellent," Hayes replied. "Captain Anderson, execute pattern Delta. All defensive platforms, prepare to fire on my command." The trap was sprung with devastating precision. As the harvester swarm entered the killing field between Mars and Jupiter, thousands of hidden weapons platforms activated simultaneously. But instead of firing energy weapons or conventional missiles, they launched specialized warheads filled with the synthetic toxins that Dr. Brooks had developed. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the harvesters. The biomechanical creatures that had seemed invincible suddenly began convulsing as the artificial compounds disrupted their biological processes. Their coordinated movements collapsed into chaos as individual creatures lost control of their systems. "Direct hits across the entire formation," reported Captain Linda Foster from her defensive position near Jupiter's moons. "The toxins are working better than we hoped. The harvesters are losing structural integrity." But the battle was far from over. The surviving harvesters quickly began adapting to the new threat, just as they had adapted to every conventional weapon used against them. Their biomechanical nature allowed them to modify their internal chemistry within minutes. "Admiral, they are developing resistance to the toxins," Dr. Brooks warned. "We need to deploy the secondary compounds before they complete their adaptation." Hayes gave the order for the second wave of attacks. Human ships that had been holding back now rushed forward, firing different toxin combinations that targeted completely separate biological systems. The harvesters found themselves fighting a war on multiple fronts as their bodies struggled to adapt to dozens of different synthetic poisons simultaneously. Anderson led his squadron in a daring close-range attack on one of the largest harvester creatures. "All ships, focus fire on the neural clusters. Dr. Brooks says those are their most vulnerable points." The human ships darted between the massive alien tentacles, like fighter aircraft attacking a battleship. Their weapons delivered concentrated doses of neural disruptor compounds directly into the creature's control systems. The giant harvester shuddered and went limp, its biomechanical processes shutting down as its nervous system collapsed. "One of the big ones is down," Anderson reported. "Repeat, we have confirmed kill on a capital-class harvester." The tide of battle began to turn as human tactics proved superior to alien adaptation. The harvesters had evolved to consume and absorb, but they had never faced an enemy that fought with synthetic poisons and coordinated strikes on their biological weak points. Admiral Kalara watched the battle from her Vorthan ship at a safe distance, amazed by what she was witnessing. How are they doing this? Every other species in the galaxy has failed against these creatures. The humans fight differently than we do, her aide Krelinoth observed. They do not try to overpower the harvesters with brute force. They use the creature's own biology against them. As the last of the harvester swarm fell silent, floating as lifeless debris in the cold vacuum of space, Admiral Hayes opened communication channels to the representatives of various galactic species who had been monitoring the battle. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Earth Defense Force," he announced. "The immediate threat has been eliminated. We are transmitting all tactical data and weapon specifications to every ship in the area. Consider it a gift to the civilizations that exiled us, but whom we chose to save anyway." The response from the galactic observers was immediate and overwhelming. Ships from dozens of species broadcast messages of gratitude and amazement. The same council delegates who had voted to quarantine humanity now begged for forgiveness and assistance. Admiral Kafara activated her own communication system. "Admiral Hayes, on behalf of the Vorthan people, and what remains of the Galactic Council, I must ask how you knew to prepare for this threat when none of our scientists detected it." Hayes' response carried the weight of humanity's bitter experience. "Over the past 2 years, we listened to our scientists instead of our politicians. We prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. When you exiled us, you gave us the motivation to become something greater than we had ever imagined possible." Dr. Brooks joined the communication from Luna Base. The harvesters were not the real enemy. Fear and arrogance were the real threats to galactic civilization. "We warned you what was coming, but you were too proud to listen." In the aftermath of the battle, rescue ships from across the galaxy began arriving to help with cleanup operations and to collect the harvester remains for study. The same species that had voted to quarantine humanity now worked alongside human crews to rebuild what had been destroyed. Captain Jake Sullivan, who had led the refugee exodus 18 months earlier, now commanded one of the rescue operations. "It is strange how things work out. They forced us to leave, and now they need us to show them how to rebuild." The new galactic order would be built on very different principles. Humanity was no longer the junior partner seeking acceptance from older civilizations. They had proven themselves as the guardians of a galaxy that had finally learned the price of its own prejudice and short-sightedness. As the last rescue ship departed the battlefield, Admiral Hayes remained at his post on Terra's shield, looking out at the stars where humanity had once built colonies before being driven back to their home system. The galaxy was safe, but the real work of building a better future was just beginning.